Snow. Adults hate it, kids love it, some people don't even know what it looks like. Along with the ice and the cold, snow is what makes winter, winter. However, for the last few Christmas seasons in Iowa, it's been missing in December only to bury us in January. But weather like this has conditioned me to be happy regardless of the time of year. It meant sledding or building snow forts as a kid, school would be canceled for an Xbox-filled day. The magic of winter has many sources too, other than snow. The build up to the holidays, unexpected gifts from kind friends, and lights all around. The romantic depiction of the season usually takes place during early November through late December. Video games have naturally capitalized on the most wonderful time of the year by including these as themes in snow levels. Platformers quickly became popular during the early console eras, and ice levels were a trend with shared principles from game to game. Make the character slip a bit here, trod through piled snow here, and add a bit more blue and white coloring. And look at that. Call it World 3 or something, start working on the sequel.
Here we go!
As the genre matured, enhanced details like snow-topped trees, warm lights, and jolly music became mainstays. That trend seemed to give way to the modern landscape, where games lean heavily on the warm Christmas motif this time of year. So much so that mature shooters and casual family titles still offer similar stylings. It's actually hard today to find a game that doesn't sell skins, dressing characters as holiday folklore icons. Snowmen, reindeer, Santa Claus, Hallmark movie protagonist, whatever six-finger AI thing Call of Duty decides to put out. You think you're safe in a Destiny video? My opinion on the whole thing, I like skins that bundle up characters like their mom told them they couldn't go outside without their snow pants. If they're fictionally cold, you should be fictionally cold. Limited time modes usually accompany these events too, commonly featuring snowball fights. These events usually begin sometime in December and cut off right around New Year's. Something seems off seeing Santa and elves in July though. I mean, it's gotta be the same type of taboo as listening to Christmas music in the summer, but I get it, some people need to listen to Last Christmas just to feel something. While snow levels and holiday theming are everywhere in December, the momentum of winterized gameplay drops dead in January. Why? While it's debated if December really is the most wonderful time of the year, just ask around and you'll quickly find out that most people dread January and February. January's bleak existence stems from many things. The holidays have come to a screeching halt, with the only other holiday to look forward to is MLK Day on the 20th. The only time I've heard of someone celebrating Martin Luther King Jr. outside of the classroom was, Oh yeah. Following that, the next big holiday is Valentine's Day, which can be stressful for couples and, more egregiously, heighten feelings of loneliness for those who spend it alone. The weather is another hardship of the months following December. In January, snow and ice typically hit harder than before. Leading up to and during the holidays, the wintry mix is sort of novel and welcome. People are off work, kids are out of class, so shoveling sidewalks and defrosting vehicles can wait until next year. In January though, that 5:30 a.m. commute isn't for the faint of heart.
Come on, old blue! Don't you talk back to me! Do as you're told! Do it!
The weather isn't cute anymore, it's an obstacle. It also doesn't let up until around March or April. It's this combination of biting cold, mountains of snow, and treacherous ice that's all out to get us. And it's all unforgiving. There's a reason people associate warmth with togetherness and happiness. Withstanding freezing temperatures will have you questioning your life decisions. It's difficult to romanticize something so brutal. So when winter rolls around, it's no wonder developers think to appeal to the magic of December. But what happens when a piece of media appeals to the unappealing? To draw inspiration from the bitterness, dread, and despair of the darkest, coldest time of the year. I'm not sure why, but this DLC has always been my favorite. It's not so much for the story though. While some of the themes from the main campaign and the side quests play a deep role into what I'm getting at with this video, first and foremost it's the environment. Europa. Technically, it's a real place. Europa is the 4th largest moon out of the 95 orbiting Jupiter. For decades, scientists have been surveying the universe, searching for potentially habitable planets. Europa caught their eye for the one thing that always seems to catch their eye: water. So much so that we sent this little fella out there last October to make an assessment. It's not just bodies of water on the surface though. Europa is thought to be comprised of a saltwater ocean that's buried beneath a thick layer of ice. What we're seeing on the surface is actually a frozen wasteland. So when Bungie decides to introduce ice powers in their game, Europa is a no-brainer. Beyond Light takes place in the world of Destiny, a looter-shooter live service game. We play as a special shooty guy called the Guardian.
Yeah, but I saw Mr. Krabs talking with his radio before. He called it his little buddy.
Oh, really?
Guardians have
Little buddy.
called ghosts that can resurrect them indefinitely. And they give cool space powers. The ghosts come from this big ball in the sky called the Traveler. Not really much else to know. Every couple of months we go somewhere, find a new threat, neutralize it, and then go back to cleaning our vaults full of weapons we won't ever use. Europa was supposed to be no exception.
That's another one. They all scan the same. Empty. Why did the darkness invite us here? You're quiet today.
Yeah. It's just, we keep coming face to face with darkness. And every time we fail to stop it, we're just so powerless.
Pausing here, I want to shout out Bungie's weapon and armor designers for this awesome set right here. There's some internal slides from the company going over some of the design cues of each set, and it's hands down my favorite set in the game. The set draws inspiration from Arctic exploration and heavy equipment carriers in the military. What stands out to me is the palette. I don't think there's a shader in the game that mimics this set. There's cool grays that sit more with a green tint. There's warm grays that have this sort of brown fur coloring. There's high-vis yellows that accent various equipment, and this dark gray wavy pattern that's even made its way into some of the accompanying apparel pieces that Bungie's released. We also can't skip past the purple glowing visors on each class. The eyepieces aren't changeable through shaders, but they do complement the base palette of grays and darker grays enough to give it a futuristic look that's in line with D2. The weapons are a completely different story. While the armor set seems to be designed for even non-dangerous fieldwork, like conducting research, gathering resources, or fixing a light bulb.
Would be nice. Let's see also.
Hey, do you think that light's gonna be important later?
Not really sure what you mean by that. I think it's just an orange light.
Alright, here we go. Blue.
The weapons design screams emergencies only. If the weapons matched the armor set, I think we'd see something a bit more robust like the overbuilt Crystal Green pieces. Instead, this is the shotgun Bone Chiller, the auto rifle Arctic Haze, and the pulse rifle Hailing Confusion. The names of all of the weapons have something to do with a dangerous, intense, cold phenomenon. Regardless, it all seems to line up with why we seem to find these weapons while conducting business on Europa. They're not pretty by any stretch of the imagination, with their gray, red, and blue, crudely painted surfaces, and their warning info stickers scattered about. In fact, they seem to be built with just enough material to be the gun they're trying to be. If you can look past the red portion on each weapon, each gun has a smaller size that makes up for it with the red frame around it. These weapons almost look modularly built. Taking into account the bright colors, these read as easy to manufacture, easy to assemble, short-term weaponry that a field operative would have to build for themselves in case of emergencies. That would explain the high-vis palette, the simple assembly techniques, the carrying handles, the directions, and the warning stickers. They remind me a lot of survival weapons for low-caliber hunting, or weapons issued to pilots if they're shot down. These weapons on Europa aren't meant as hunting for sport surviving, they're made as hunted for sport surviving, since there's no non-hostile organisms, even before we got here. Rant over, back to when we got here. Beyond Light's story is centered around a new gameplay element, a strategy Bungie would use for future installments. Pretty frequently. Pretty hard. Like throughout all the marketing material, this was the first new subclass to come to the game since Destiny 1's introduction. Stasis freezes both literally and physically. both in time and in temperature. The beauty behind its design is that it's conflicting. It's more than another thing to reach out and grab. It comes from a thing that we've considered corrupting and heretic. This is no tool of the Traveler, like we're used to. It's not arc energy, it's not solar energy, and it's not void energy. It's darkness, the antithesis of everything we had come to take refuge in, everything we thought we knew. Its presence within Beyond Light's story brings out this sense of loneliness. It had this power to drive everyone apart. When we listen to the radios at our base camp, the chatters of allies and friends, we hear about Guardians falling to the power, turning on each other, turning against each other, or even going missing. Throughout the campaign on Europa, our enemy, Eramis, speaks to us like a lunatic. She takes on this form of everything we worry about. What happens if we don't stop her, and what we might become if we do. We can't win without using stasis, yet we need to confront this power that might corrupt us from within. The dilemma in the themes that face us culminates into Second Thoughts, a short piece from the soundtrack.
That power that Eramis has, I've never seen anything like it. If she succeeds in granting it to her entire army, I know you're trying to do the right thing, but I can't shake the feeling you're going about it the wrong way. Think about what Varric said about Eramis. She turned to the darkness in order to help her people, and now look at her. Even if you can control the darkness for good, nothing can change the fact that I was forged in the light. And all of this, well, it goes against who I am. What I am. I keep thinking about the darkness possessing me again. I'd never forgive myself if the same happened to you.
The darkness from within isn't our only worry. Throughout the rest of Europa, there's loss around every corner. Outposts, facilities, structures, all empty. Europa was once inhabited by humans, reincarnated through robotic bodies called exos. The exos that once were here are all gone, scattered, or dead. If you want a cute little commemorative shader, you can go search all over the frozen moon for 8 of the dead ones, with saved voice recordings.
Well, I don't have any evidence or anything. I just think we're all acting a little too confident in our own firepower.
Most are pretty tame. Doubts of the scientist Clovis Bray and his promises of immortality.
A glitch. That's what I figured. 'Cause you'd have to be pretty twisted to curse me into eternal dissatisfaction on purpose.
Doubts of coming to Europa in the first place.
When we set off for this godforsaken ice cube, I thought, I'll never forget this as long as I live. How pitifully ironic.
And others that go into the psychological horror of an artificial body with glitches and lapses in memory.
But how can I possibly describe how it felt to hold my son? My son? Is this the child in my dreams? The one that says, "What does the Lord require of you? To act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God."
Beyond Light's story revolves around Eramis and her lieutenants. While scouting Europa, it's clear that they need to be dealt with. Each lieutenant looks pretty similar, and most people who go through the Beyond Light campaign today aren't going to pay attention to the fact that they're even different enemies at all. Only after playing through the different Empire hunts multiple times was I able to see the nuance in each one's design. They all seem to have their own shtick. Phylaks, the warrior, Praxis, the technocrat, Kridis, the dark priestess, and Atraks 1, the fallen exo. Now these vices, they're not traditional, but each lieutenant's title is an obsession. It's their whole personality, and it's almost to the detriment of each one's design. They each read like a one-dimensional brute, but I'd argue it shows the corruption of the darkness. You can see it play out in cutscenes where Kridis, the dark priestess, tries to deter Eramis from losing any more soldiers.
Eramis, we must take pause. These powers are not what we expected. I, too, am impatient. But there is wisdom in caution. Caution? Look what caution has earned us. Our enemy exploits our weakness. Now we must act. I will give these Guardians the destruction they crave.
While trying not to disclose too many spoilers for Beyond Light, we deal with Eramis and her lieutenants in the end. But that's not the end. Rather, Zavala, our commander's message to us, concludes this story.
Kridis is defeated. But it's not the Fallen that concern me now. It's us. I've had time to think. Guardians are not immune to corruption. The pursuit of power has divided us before. I don't know what comes next, but I know that we must remain in the light. I see fractures already. If we bend, we will break. Guardians must not use the darkness. This is the Vanguard's official position. The people of this city look to us. Help me show them the way.
Our leader, from day one, telling us not to use this power, to leave it alone, and to only use the light. That's such a strange way to end the story in this climate. To give a player a new gameplay element, and yet to have one of the most trusting, long-term characters in the game command us to leave it be, expecting us to follow his example, to respect his insight. The sentiment behind Beyond Light's campaign is a bit hard to decipher. With its launch, lots of game content became unplayable, along with other reasonable gameplay criticisms. Beyond Light was my re-entry into the series after a complete hiatus from Vanilla D2. I think it was around Season of the Splicer, and Prophecy was pinnacle alongside Vault of Glass. Campaigns in D2 can usually be distilled down to
another day, another victory for the OG,
with a very slow overarching narrative afterwards. Stasis, in its fully unlocked state, is kept behind the campaign's completion, leading even casual players to speedrun most portions. I can't blame players for this behavior. Even from a more immersed perspective, our little trip to Europa feels like strictly business. But Europa, a frozen over moon littered with dead artificial corpses, full of enemies, buried secrets, and ruin, was not just another victory for the OGs. Backup wasn't coming, backup wasn't supported. Your mission was classified, your powers were classified, and Guardians weren't supposed to be here. We're not supposed to be here. In what is by far my favorite D2 promotional image, Beyond Light features this as the cover art. There's so much white space used in this picture, so much nothing happening. There are plenty of interesting characters and enemies introduced in this DLC. Yet for this image, no one else is present, except you. The scene features a hunter on their own, harnessing stasis in one hand, almost subconsciously. Are they reluctant or nervous? The Crystalline armor set's pack has been dropped, and they seem to be taking a break from the action. A pyramid ship looms in the darkness. At the time, there was so little known about these ships. So much uncertainty. The weapon on the hunter's back had me scouring collections to figure out what it was, and for the life of me, I couldn't figure it out. I was so certain it was the same model as the Servant Leader rifle I use quite often, but the barrels don't exactly line up. I was about to give up before recording the script when I decided to go through sniper rifles one more time, and it led me down a rabbit hole that took way too much of my time. First off, it's a Nadir manufactured sniper rifle. At the time of recording, there are 2 attainable ones in the game. This Vanguard one called the Persuader, and a future War Cult one called the Domino. The third sniper rifle is called the Gentleman Vagabond, an ARC sniper rifle from the early days of Crucible. I was able to find clips of this weapon online featured in both the heavy slot and the special slot. It's that old. There's something about seeing a Destiny 2 montage with pitch-shifted skillet in the background. It's a beautiful thing. Now, it's not that this weapon or the other two have anything to really do with the one featured in the Beyond Light art, because this weapon right here doesn't really look like any of them. If I had to guess, I think that the Persuader rifle is the best fit between the three, as the Crucible and Space Racism have little to do with the story. The Persuader is a Vanguard-issued weapon that's been around since Season 1 of Destiny 2, aka since the beginning. It's just a theory, but I wonder if the reason this rifle is unidentifiable is to further support the narrative that this mission is unsanctioned by the Vanguard. This rifle has been modified to remove any Vanguard branding as to not draw connections. Perhaps the Guardian deliberately modified this weapon to distance themselves from Zavala and the Vanguard, to show that stasis is a part of their arsenal now, and they won't blindly follow Zavala's orders to stop its practice to save face. Or maybe it's just because this weapon looked cool on the Hunter's back. Or maybe it's an unreleased variant, who really knows, it's just a theory. But more importantly, why feature a single Hunter instead of the full fire team? Why feature a random, standard-looking rifle instead of any other weapon? Especially any released in this DLC. These have to be deliberate choices. And I think that's because that's not really what Beyond Light's about. It's not about Eramis, her lieutenants, the weapons, the armor, or another Vanguard mission in the name of the Traveler. Beyond Light is more about our Guardian dealing with darkness. We're overwhelmed and underprepared. The unforgiving, corrupting, isolating power is something we've only heard stories about. Stories where no one comes back the same. Or at all. The Guardian has so few things to rely on. The rifle on their back is one of those few things. Most likely brought from home, from Earth. Up until this exact point in the story, it had only been about defending the light. That which was known and good. But now we have no choice but to tread this frozen wasteland of the dead and the doomed, for the sake of overcoming it.